things that trees provide, if you look at the interlinking of different elements of life, if you look at rivers, ecologically speaking, they call it watersheds. And a watershed is like the branches of a tree. One of my favorite speakers that I've been to and heard at reverential ecology retreats is Vandana Shiva. She talked about when you build dams, the purpose of building dams is flood control and securing water supply. Now, she compared a watershed to a tree. And actually other speakers have done this too. Like, if you were to look at the branches of a typical tree, compared to, and this is average, not all trees are the same, not all rivers are the same. But the branches have more volume than they have in the trunk. So in a river, similarly speaking, there's more volume upstream than there is in the trunk. Where are the dams built? They're built at the trunks. And if you really wanted water, you could look at New York City, what they did. They have a water system that is not a dam reservoir system, they have a forest management system. They were going to do a reservoir system because that's how the conventional engineering is done for, like, it's engineering understanding of water. Not that engineering is bad and wrong, it's very useful and powerful. But for certain things, it's good to also know ecology. River Keepers is a nonprofit in the state of New York. When they heard about this reservoir system, they did some analysis, cost benefit. They know the rivers and they know what they can hold. So they did quantitative analysis of how much water they can provide through river management, forest management, and how much they can provide through dams. And they figured out that it would cost less than half, about 40% or so, through a forest management system, and you would get better quality water than a reservoir. A cousin of mine did what I call an idli test. Idlis are spongy rice cakes. And they had bottles of water. They have family in New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. And I think they might have had one more, but I remember these three. And they made idlis with water from all these different places. And the idli that was the best and the worst. The best had the spongiest idli, and it stayed spongy the longest. The hardest one was not as big, and it hardened up right away. So, do you want to guess which one was the best one? New York. And what was the worst one?
DC.
It was New Jersey. So the reason it was the worst, and I was like, I was in New Jersey a while back, and it was just after rains. It was beautiful. I walked by a trail and there was rivers. And I was like, so how do they get water in New Jersey? They have reservoirs. Now reservoirs, I just understood this to this extent, like, I think 3-4 weeks ago. Like, what does a reservoir do to water? Basically, if you ask a river, the river would say, I'm not so sweet when you clog me up. So that's what a river is saying. You clog me up and I'm not going to be sweet. So the water, the water has the capacity to absorb salts, and when it's sitting, it heats up and it absorbs more and more salt. If you look at the LA water, when it comes from Colorado, it is harder water than when it comes from Owens Valley or even from Northern California. So New York City was lucky to have river keepers who knew the value of forest management. And what a forest does, it's a sponge. Have you ever looked at when rivers flowing, even after it has stopped raining for like months? Why? Why does a river flow when it has stopped flowing for months? Where's the water coming from? Soil. The water that's flowing in a river is actually like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more water on the sides and underneath, flowing slowly in the soils. When you put a well, you're tapping into that water. So a river is the tip of the iceberg of the water system. And when you have an effective forest management system, the rest of the iceberg of a river is what will keep feeding the river for when the months it has not rained. So when you manage the forest, you actually get a water that's been flowing and purifying naturally. Because the trees absorb the salts. They bind the soil. So you get best quality water from forest management at a lower cost. Now what can we do with this knowledge? If you look at climate change, you look at all the things that are going to happen. Things are going to shift dramatically. We are going to have sessions on that. But you get to choose what kind of changes you're going to make. And if you have this ecological knowledge in the hands of business people, in the hands of policymakers, what can we do? We can improve our health, we can improve our environment, and we are doing it. If you look at, I don't know the name of the proposition, but the state of California, the voters passed a proposition to restore a lot of watersheds. And one of them will be the Los Angeles River. The Los Angeles River, most of it is dammed. It's just a channel. All that water just falls and just gets piped to the ocean. Not piped, but channelized to the ocean. What LA used to be was a marsh. Like 3 months out of the year, most of LA that's flat used to be boggy marshy. So imagine the amount of water that LA is just throwing away by having these channels. They have reservoirs, granted, but they could do better things. They could do urban forestry. There's a nonprofit in LA that does that, 3 people. They did a demo in Sun Valley. It's a flood-prone region. And it floods. Whenever it floods, they have to cancel schools for elementary schools because the roads get clogged up. So in a small block, they basically planted trees and they changed the curb cut design. So the water would actually flow in the trees. And with this pilot project where they planted trees strategically, they know the trees that hold water and what's effective for what areas. That flood-prone region stopped having floods, that lowland. So that's the power of urban forestry in a region like LA also. So that's my bit on trees and ecology.